Hi all. Oh, here are more space engineers. Yay! And I'm not quite sure what to categorize this as because when we did the Wheel of Clang last week, a lot of people were asking. It's one. I have to say, it's one of the most requested feedback I've gotten. Asking about how I did the whole thing for the ejector seat that we did as part of the open. So I figured we'd come by. I'll show you how I set that up, what you're going to need to do to build your own, and one of the things that you can do to exploit the mechanics of Clang. First, we have to get started. So let's go. So happy Wednesday, everybody. Hopefully you're having a fantastic day and a terrific week thus far. Okay, so what we are talking about here is, yes, that is probably going to give people motion sickness, so we're going to look away from that for a second. So when we did the ejector seat last week, I was honestly very surprised by just how much interest there was in it. I know that there are different takes on how to do it, and what I wanted to do was walk you through basically how we had it set up. It's obviously not the only way or the best way, or, you know, like that, but I wanted to show you basically what I was doing, because a lot of what you'll see for ejector seats or escape pod kind of builds tend to be things that are using you know, merge blocks. And merge blocks, they're not expensive, but they're not inexpensive either. And I figured if you were going to do something like that, now this is not the, like I said, this is not the only way that you can do it. Let's go over here for a second. So you can have things like artificial mass blocks. In fact, let's get that off there. Yeah, let me get that out of there. So we're going to do that. And we're going to do that. Alright, so gravity generators are obviously large grid only. So if you're doing something where you want to have a small grid style ejector system, be it an ejector seat, escape pod, whatever, and you don't want to have it powered, what you can do is you can set up your something with an artificial mass block and a battery. I mean, it's really simple. When you're talking small grid like this, you know, once you're there, once you have your stuff in place, there we go, with a small battery. Because these things don't take a whole lot to build. They're really, really cheap, and you don't need it to do much. You just basically need it to provide enough power to get whatever your delivery system is away from the ship or the base or whatever you're building. And so what I've done is I've actually started building them on rotors for a couple of different reasons. One, it's much cheaper. If you look at the merge block here, you know, so for the merge block, it's one computer, 2 small tubes, 1 motor, 5 components, and 4 steel plates. Where if you use a rotor, the replacement cost for the connector I guess it's negligible. It's just steel plates and steel tubes, or small steel tubes. So, to me, that's cheaper because this is just iron versus having something that requires nickel, silicon, and any other resources, So, but that, like I said, it's 6 of one, half dozen of the other. The other benefit of it is that for your escape pods, if you wanted to do something with a little bit more detail, you know, and basically use the small grid items for building, because let's face it, they are extremely cheap in comparison to the large grid equivalents. And it makes the rotor just makes it easier to do, because you'll have to put a rotor in at some point to do the conversion. So if we just use the rotor head as the point of connection, when we set up any type of launch sequences, we basically have the rotor head release as part of the launch. So you just have it eject the rotor head. Now, one of the things that we did, well, you know, we were showing it earlier, is that if you play with Clang a little bit in here, you'll get the rotor will start basically vibrating very violently, and it will do one of several things. It'll either launch you backwards, as you saw. It'll launch you straight up. It may launch you forward, depending on where you touch the grid, or it could kill the character. So you can actually use these inside bases, because it does actually fling you as though you're in free fall. So if you're inside of a base, you know, or inside of a ship with a large enough hallway, when you hit this thing, it'll slam you it slams your character into the wall or the ceiling, and you can, so even if it doesn't kill them outright, it could fling them into something and kill them that way. So bonus points for Clang and Space Engineers. Okay, so let's clean this up a little bit really quick, and then what we're talking about here, I'm gonna build off of this a little bit, just because we can. You know what, let's go ahead and do that. Obviously we are in creative mode, and I am going to do that. Right? And what we're doing is we're basically taking what we have over here, this whole section, and we're building it above ground so you can see it a little bit easier as to exactly how we're doing things for like block placements. And I'm going to do that just because. What? And that is our new rotor, so I'm gonna actually, can I get just the rotor piece? Yes, there we go. I don't always, oh hello, I don't always get that on the first try for some reason. You are the only one. We are going to say demo rotor, that way we can find it. And we're going to add the small head to it really quick. And one of the things you can do is, if you don't want to have lots of stuff showing up over here, like if you want to make it a little bit more stable, you can actually lock the rotor head. I tend not to, because I'm just silly like that. So we're going to go up a few blocks. Generally I say like 4 or 5 blocks, because that usually gets you about where you need to be for everything. Alright, so let's go ahead and grab there. And we're ready to go.
Fuel low. Fuel critical.
Yeah, I know fuel's critical. It's fine. Okay. And that gets you the basics of what we need in place. Now, one of the other reasons that I say I usually take these like 4 or 5 up is because when you start placing things like rotor or thrusters on them, the small thrusters, if you're using, we're just using atmospherics for this because we're on planet. Now you could actually put additional thrusters in here, like if you wanted to do say, atmospheric and ion, so that if you're in space, you can use it. If you're in atmosphere, you can use it. You know, it's just you need to plan around what your usage is for it. And then once you know how you're planning on using it, we want to try and keep mass somewhat balanced. I mean, that really is, at this point, all you need. So, what I do is, now that we have that in there, is you put your seat, whatever type of seat you want to use. We're going to use a passenger seat because, well, those tend to be the seat that get used a lot. Alright, we're going to come over here. Grab thrusters. You are turned off, so these are the ones that we want. This is going to be ejector demo thrusters. We're going to turn those off, and then we're going to crank the override as much as possible. Because what we want to do is we want to have it set up so that when you turn this, when you launch this thing, it's going to go as quickly as possible. And then you detach the head and it launches, just like we did before. But we're going to add a little twist to this. Right? Because if you want to do things the really crazy way, put 2 timer blocks in. And I am going to just go ahead and grab a button panel. Because, well, you know, button panels make everything better. Yeah. Okay. And so now we have timer blocks, right? So this is going to be ejector start. This is going to be ejector launch. Yep. We want both of these. Oh, are you not going to let me set silent on all of them at once? Really? Oh, there we go. Okay. It was just being silly. Alright. So yeah, so basically I don't like timer blocks clicking, so we turn those off. And then one of the things that I will generally do is, for the initial one, I'll set it for, say, like 3 seconds or so, maybe 5. Again, you're gonna want to adjust these times to meet what it is you want it to do. We are going to go thrusters, ejector demo thrusters. We want it to toggle those blocks on. So what will happen is, you push the button, it will then take, it'll do its countdown for 3 seconds. At the end of the 3 seconds, it turns on the thrusters and will trigger the launch timer block. We want it to start, right? Now, if you want to do things with, say, like warheads, because if you remember, what I had was an ejector seat that when it threw you out, it would eventually explode. And that there's actually reason to use this type of stuff, because using this type of system, instead of ejector seats here, we could put decoy blocks on this. You know, so what you end up with is a forced launch decoy system. So if you took a blueprint of the ship, once everything was said and done, you could actually have a very simple, very quick reef arming system that would be able to build, you know, a decoy launcher, which is actually pretty important. Let me see here. I'm going to check something with these, because you do have small decoys. Not that anymore. So if you have a large decoy, see, because decoys are self-powered. You don't need batteries for those. So what we could do is, if we wanted to be really funny about it, we could put a bunch of decoys up here if we wanted to. Or we could put a bunch of warheads on here if we wanted to. Because remember, just like decoys, warheads are completely self-contained. You do not need batteries for these things to be armed. Well, I should say, you don't need batteries for these things to detonate. Let's go over here really quick. See? I don't know if that's going to be... That might be too close. Go! See, look at that. Ooh. That was a little bit more of an explosion than I remember it being. Alright. So that just gives you an idea of some of the ways that you can use this setup pretty much as is. So now we have all sorts of stuff in here. So what we can do is, let's go into the timer really quick. And for our launch timer, we're going to do, I don't know, like another 3 seconds or so. We're going to set up our actions. And since these are all on the grid together, you don't have to worry about it. Basically, you'd have to rebuild it every time you rebuild this. So what you could do is you could have something set up where you have timers on the main ship, but then you have to worry about things not necessarily working the way they're supposed to. Right? So we're doing launch timers. Alright, so we're going to go rotor, and we want this to detach the rotor head. We want warheads. Actually, I need to set that up as a group. So we're going to set all of these up. Warhead demo group. I'm not too put out on this. Right, so let's go back into timer. Groups. Warhead demo. We want it to arm. Oh, did they take out the... look at you. Okay. Okay, so now what will happen is we set this button to take you, and that'll start the timer. So now if we do everything right, or if we did everything right, we can push this button. It'll count down to 3 seconds, turn those thrusters on, trigger the other block, count 3 more seconds, detach the head and arm the warheads. So let's see if it works. 2, 3. We have ignition. And then obviously if you want things to go further or faster, you know, you just add more
critical
to it. So when that comes down, I'm gonna be over here just in case. Because eventually what will happen is it'll get to its maximum height. Should have just enough power to go for... Actually, it was tied to the grid, so those are maybe charged now. So yeah, you now have weapon platforms that you can deploy. Or ejector seats, or anything else that you really want to use it for. And like I said, the added bonus is that if you really want to be evil, you can take blocks. Ah, there it goes. And get flung around. Alright, so. Where did that land? Oh, it landed on the base. Awesome. Surprised I didn't land on the wheel, actually. I'm not gonna lie. Oh, so, yeah. There you go. Decoy launcher, warhead launcher, whatever you want. And... suicide device. Alright. So, I hope that has helped you understand about, basically how I was building, what the thought process on it was, and has given you some ideas for your own builds. Because we do talk about a lot of different types of things, like the old grav cannons, and things where we would do. You hear people talk about the Clang drives. All of those things are built on basically just this type of mechanic. It really is that simple. It just takes a little bit of experimentation, a little bit of practice, and a willingness to blow things up. So, alright, so we're going to get out of here. If you enjoyed this, make sure you hit that like button. If you have any questions or comments, be sure to throw those down in the section below. If there's something especially if there's something you want to see built, we're still getting a handle on the new creative build ideas. We will be doing another Wheel of Clang in the near future. That seemed to be very popular. It was actually another thing I was surprised by, just how popular that was. And in the future episodes, there will be probably more outlandish builds. One of the things I'm looking at is grabbing a couple of the what is it, the trade ships that have been the economy based trade ships, and modifying those out a little bit, because there's a couple of things that I want to do. I was looking at some of them, and I have some ideas for alternative modes of transportation. Anyway, if you're new to the channel and you did enjoy this, make sure you hit not only that like button, but be sure to subscribe. Not only does it let you know when new content's coming out, it also lets me know you're enjoying the videos. And that's what we're here for. So anyway, I'm going to get out of here. I hope you all have a fantastic day. Enjoy the rest of your week. And we'll see you back here next time for more Space Engineers. As always, folks, take care and be safe out there, everybody. I should start a kill counter. Maybe we'll add a kill counter.